Breaking news here on a Wednesday afternoon as LSU has snagged one of the top wideouts in the 2026 class as Tristan Keys announces his commitment to Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. Hello, everyone. My name is Bryce Koon, and welcome into this rapid reaction on the recruiting front. Try to say that maybe 5 times fast. But the big news, obviously, Tristan Keys, fresh off a weekday visit to Baton Rouge, has made his commitment public, announcing, about an hour or two ago that he was going to be committing to LSU, Cortez Hankton, and what has been known as wide receiver U. Now, a little bit of information on the Hattiesburg, Mississippi native. This is a 6'2.5" receiver, probably closer to 6'3", around 180 to 185 pounds. He is a 5-star in every sense of the word. Per the 24/7 Sports Only ranking, he is 4th in the country in terms of the 4th best player in the country, the number 1 receiver and the number 1 recruit in the state of Mississippi. And then on the composite ranking, for people who don't know, kind of takes in a plethora of other services and websites. He just goes back one spot. He's the 5th best player in the country and the number 1 receiver still in the, both in his class and the number 1 player in Mississippi as well. LSU wins this battle, by the way, over a host of some really, really good programs. Tennessee was really in the mix here. Your host of SEC programs were in the mix, and the Tigers have won, I'll say, the initial battle for the services of Tristan Keys. This is far from over, people, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But I did want to get to the scouting report here as well. Andrew Ivins does a great job, director of scouting for 24/7 Sports. Back in November, had the following scouting report on Mr. Keys. He says he's a potential game wrecker on the outside that can attack all 3 levels and constantly challenge defenses. He pairs elite ball skills together with dynamic route running, superior athleticism, and a long levered frame, which creates separation with suddenness and will break off defensive backs with snappy cuts. He attacks the football with confidence and has a rather high success rate in contested catch situations, which is usually creating an advantage with his natural bounce. He's competitive with the ball in his hands and can hit the throttle to capitalize on his catch and run opportunities. This past offseason, he shined in multiple events after the summer. That was the 2024 summer, after sophomore year, before assembling elite junior tape for a Hattiesburg squad that went undefeated during the regular season. He might not ever be classified as a true burner, Ivan says, but has the skill set to emerge as a playmaker and trusted option on the perimeter for a college football playoff contender, given the combination of size, fluidity, and coordination. Keys is a multi-sport athlete. He's been a part of the track and field team there at Hattiesburg. He qualified for state as a sophomore in both the high jump, the triple jump, and the 110-meter hurdles. He took bronze in the state high jump competition. He also played basketball. As a 10th grader, and this is per Max Preps, he averaged 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game there as well. The most notable action that Keys has recently had on a football field was in the Under Armour All-American game back at the beginning of January, where he had 3 catches for 31 yards. And then in the Polynesian Bowl, he had 5 catches for 41 yards and a score. Look, he's fresh off a visit to LSU. He visited Miami earlier in the month. He visited for Junior Day for Alabama back in February. He got an offer from Oregon, an offer from Texas. But it's been LSU who has been, I would say, just kind of the biggest the biggest piece to the puzzle here. And I thought this was great too. Hudson Standish of the 24/7 Sports National Scouting Team had notes on this. This was a guy who was spectacular when you look at his junior season. 58 catches, 1,200 receiving yards, and 14 touchdowns. And the multi-sport profile is something that comes highly decorated there as well. He did earn the Alpha Dog honors on day 1 of practice of the Under Armour All-American game, and then was a name you should probably know in terms of that superlative that Andrew Ivins likes to give out every single year. I wanted to go back to what Ivins said in that piece. He says the Mississippi native is the only 5-star wide receiver per 24/7 Sports at this stage of the evaluation process, and looked the part of a future college football playoff contending wide receiver 1 through stretches of Monday's practice. He appears to have added solid weight to his 6'2" frame, making him difficult to cover in short area situations, and change of direction skills were still elite there as well. He has an 80-inch wingspan. All of that stuff is really, really cool. It's fun stuff to talk about. But I think that this is something, when we talk about how this affects LSU, we're going to take a look here at the tape here in just a second. But Tristan Keys joining forces in this 2026 class, it does a couple things for you. It really starts to solidify what your wide receiver class could look like. We had been talking, obviously, Kenny Darby's currently in the fold, Ja'Kai Anderson, the two in-state products there in the fold. You still have Jabari Mack out there. You still have Booby Feaster out there that you could go and get. But this is the first big domino to fall. And the next plausible thing is, what would it look like to get the number one class? Look, you don't win games all based off recruiting, but it's a big reason you can win games. It's not the only reason, but it's a big way you can. Getting Tristan Keys a part of this class and starting to build for the future, especially in a wide receiver room, which I think needs more physical presence in terms of bodies out there. They went and got Nick Anderson out of the portal. I loved the addition of him, but I think you need some guys who can emerge. Keys has all the tools to do just that. So I love the addition of Keys. We talk about, all the reports, and we can say this too. At spring practice of the day, he was kind of shadowing and mirroring whatever Cortez Hankton did. Tristan Keys was right there as well, just kind of hanging out, making sure that he was kind of around the product of the practice and everything there as well. That visit must have gone well to earn the commitment. Now, we're going to take a look at the film, and then I'm going to get here in a second to what I wanted to talk about in terms of, just where you not where you go from here, but I think in terms of just what could happen next and why Keys recruitment is definitely not over. So we're taking a look at some of the clips here presented by Huddle. You can kind of see him circled on the screen right here. And look, a lot of the things that we talked about in the scouting reports, whether it was Brandon Hoffman, Hudson Standish, or Andrew Ivins, you're able to see here on the tape. I mean, just his ability to create separation. He's got a great first move off the line of scrimmage, blowing past defenders. And I think it's the tight routes that you're going to notice when you watch this. And like I said, you can go check this out for yourself over on his Huddle profile, just as junior highlights here. But starring for the Hattiesburg Tigers this past year has to make LSU fans feel pretty good. But I think it's a great example here, too, as you watch right there, yards after the catch and what he could do, because this isn't a slight guy. This isn't a guy with a slight frame. 6'2", 180. Obviously, the conversation has, once he gets onto a college campus, what can you add to that to make him more of a physically imposing receiver in terms of what he could do? So I think this is a massive pickup. I think it's a great pickup for this room. It mirrors what they want to do. You're able to see him work in various different ways, whether it's the downfield shot, whether it's kind of the tunnel or bubble screen that you can see multiple times on this tape as well. He's a do-it-all type of player. And when you're looking at wide receivers, you want a guy that can do a little bit of everything. You talk about the contested catches right there. I mean, if you're listening to this on audio, head over to YouTube right now, because you just got to see kind of what he can do with the contested catch there as well. And we'll watch one more of the clips here. And like I said, you can check the full highlights, and you can find that in the bio of this video or anything below. But just his ability to, I think, create differently and just do different things is something that you like to see and you want out of a receiver. And LSU's used to seeing that. So it does beg the question, though. What's next? What is next for LSU as they go into this next season of recruiting Tristan Keys? Because I said this at the beginning of the show, with Keys, you have a guy that you've won the initial battle, but recruiting is a war. And so now you've got to go in here and you've got to make sure all the needs are met. You've got to make sure that both from a financial perspective, from a playbook perspective, from feeling at home perspective, everything checks the boxes until he signs his name on the dotted line come December. That's the sprint, or they've won the sprint, I'll say. Here's the marathon part of it. And I know I've seen on our message board, a lot of LSU fans were kind of just like, okay. And for understandable reasons. You got burnt by Bryce Underwood last year. Totally understand that. I get it. It changes the way not only that you follow recruiting, but the fact of how I'm going to cover recruiting here from here on out, because some things can be said and then it kind of goes haywire towards the end of the recruitment. But that being said, with Tristan Keys, you've just won the first battle. You've won the initial sprint. You still have multiple laps left, and that's going to be the biggest key, in no pun intended, in his recruitment. Can you continue to win each mile? And that's where I kind of sit with this. Is here's the marathon. You've won the first mile. You got 25 more miles to go. Let's see what you can do. LSU made a good first impression. They've made a good follow-up impression. They've done what they need to do on the front end. Now it's about continuing to stay with that word. And truth be told, what does the rest of this wide receiver class look like? If you get Booby Feaster in this class, you're talking about one of the best wide receiver classes we've seen in a long time. If you get Jabari Mack, obviously the in-state kid, it's a really, really elite class that you can do a lot of things with. So there's plenty of opportunities to make this class greater. And what's the timeline? Well, we'll have to see. A lot of these kids have, dates that they're going to commit. They've got time frames that they want to commit. They want to take OVs. Obviously, this one happens early into the month of or middle of month of March, early in the process for a lot of these guys. So there's gonna be a lot of people that take this with a grain of salt. There's gonna be a lot of fans that say, okay, let's hold up. Been burned before. I completely get that. But it does beg the question of what's next. What's next is you got to win the next 25 miles, the marathon of this journey in recruiting Tristan Keys. The second piece to this puzzle here, and I wanted to make sure I got this, out here, was a big reason why I think that they can win this battle. Okay, Donovan Tate has done a fantastic job with this recruitment. LSU recruiting staffer was promoted in the offseason. He's done a fantastic job. Lots of connections there between him and Keys. You can obviously go check that out and look that up for more information. But those guys have got to come up big here. You got out in front. Can you remain in pole position till the end? But what's next in terms of the recruiting front? 2026 quarterback is definitely interesting. Bo Bentley was on campus this past weekend. You've had a host of elite prospects the past 2 weekends. That's going to continue in terms of a visitor list going forward. It's going to be interesting to see because I think that this 2026 class, and I wanted to add this in here, has the opportunity to be the number one class when everything's said and done. And why is that? Because you are lining up what could be an amazing, unreal wide receiver class, like I talked about. Aaron Gregory is obviously still a guy that I'm looking at. If you're interested in kind of the recruiting names to know, he's committed to Texas A&M. He has continued to have an open dialogue with LSU. Jalen Lott, who I interviewed last week, very explosive. LSU's battling kind of Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, and Oregon in that recruiting battle. But outside of the receiver room, this is something where, look, Lamar Brown has pretty much, told you he kind of wants to be at LSU. Okay. A&M is challenging, but Brown has been very consistent in saying the Tigers are the top of his list. He's the number one interior offensive lineman for a lot of people in the country. He's a defensive line absolute target that you have to have as well. Another kid that's straight up within the city limits, Blaine Bradford. Can you get him from Catholic? You got his younger brother last year, and Jacob Bradford. Blaine Bradford is one of the top prospects in the state. You could add him to the fold. You already have Richard Anderson and Aiden Hall committed. Darius McKinley is another guy. I'll tell you this: a guy that I talked to this past weekend, Des Ellis, is a defensive back target that I think LSU sits in very, very good position with. So those are just kind of some of the pieces maybe that Aiden Pouncey was on campus, the Winter Park, Florida, defensive back. Bryson Martinez has already given you a pledge. And then you had, and I'm going to butcher his name if I try to say it, so I need to get the pronunciation correct before I say it, but Emmanuel, the big I, I'm going to call him, the massive 5-star offensive tackle that was on campus this week. And you have to ask yourself, you just closed so quickly on Tristan Keys. Can you make a move with Big I? That would be very, very interesting to see. So Zayden Crimpin, obviously getting his OV, that was one that Glenn talked to this week. That was a really, really big one just in terms of what you wanted to do. So all things considered, what is next? Win the marathon with Tristan Keys, and the pathway to a number one class is obviously there. LSU's in the mix for a lot of these guys. They're not going to get all of them, but I will tell you is this: they're doing their due diligence. They've got the eyes and ears of some people. And obviously, it makes for an intriguing quarterback recruiting battles that you could, work out and see what you have in 2026 and then 2027 and beyond. But the big news here on a Wednesday afternoon: Tristan Keys, 5-star receiver, top 5 player in the country per 24/7 Sports, commits to LSU. My name is Bryce Koon, and this is the Rapid Recruiting Roundup. Should we call it the Triple R Show? I don't know. We should, but big time reaction. Tristan Keys is an LSU Tiger, and we will tell you all about it, obviously, on the website, on the board. So make sure you join Go 24/7. Make sure you get in with us, have great conversation. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check us out on all social media platforms and those podcast platforms as well. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.